So you've done your review of the year, you've gone through and you've identified all of your positive experiences and your negative experiences, and you've responded to the positive ones, and you've said thank you for all the good things that have happened. But what do you do with the negative experiences? Well, I think the first thing to do is to recognize that they are negative experiences, because naming them as things that have influenced or have hurt you is really, really important. And for me, I think there's kind of three different categories of negative experiences. And they kind of fall into general things under your control and things not under your control. But there's things that are the result of what you have done, so things that are your own fault. Maybe you've done something to somebody else and you regret doing it. Maybe your patience was worn so thin that you flew off the handle at your kids or at your boss or at an employee or at someone in the grocery store, and then that hurt that you caused was a really painful experience for you. Well, maybe it happened with somebody else doing that to you. Maybe the second category is things that are somebody else's fault, something that someone did to you, and maybe they did it intentionally, maybe they did it unintentionally, but recognizing that those things are painful for you as well. And then the third category, I think, are things that are outside of our control. And this year we've recognized that there's a lot that is outside of our control. So how do you deal with these three different things? Well, I think for the last category, for things that are outside of our control, we're going to have to learn to simply let go of them. Now, that sounds so simple, and in some ways it kind of is. If it's not that big a deal, if it's something that happened outside of our control, it may simply be just not thinking about that any longer, kind of moving on and saying, yes, that happened, grieving the pain that has caused, and then focusing on what we can control, which is our response to that or to other things that are going on. Sometimes things happen to us, though, that involve more, and so maybe it involves talking something out or seeking help from a professional to help us walk through some of these things. Ultimately, it sometimes requires us wrestling with God about why He allowed this to happen to us and why He allows these things to continue. Now, to respond to the second category, to things that have happened to you from somebody else, at some point it's important, especially as Christians, we need to work towards forgiveness for that person. And forgiveness not necessarily so that they're better off and they can move on with their life, but so that we are better off and we can move on with our life as well. The ultimate goal, of course, of forgiveness is reconciliation, coming back together and renewing a relationship, but that's not always possible. But working towards forgiveness, letting go of the bitterness or the desire for revenge, or even sometimes the desire for justice, is important to free us from the pain of the past and the continual pain that we carry with us. Now, if it's something that you did, that you are regretting and that caused a negative experience, well, you'll need to learn to forgive yourself for that as well. But in order to move ahead, you're going to need to recognize that, so admit that it's something that you did to yourself, to God, and to the person you hurt. Try to make apologies where it's not going to cause further harm, right? That's one of the keys of the 12-step program, is we make apologies and we make amends for the harm that we have done, as long as it's not going to cause further harm. Now, when that's all done, and I would encourage you not to spend too much time on that unless there's something really serious that you need to deal with and you need to work through. But once that's all done, I would suggest you take your paper and cut it or rip it in half down that dividing line between positive and negative experiences. And I would suggest taking that list of negative experiences and burning it, or disposing of it in a dramatic way to symbolize you letting go of that, of getting over it, of allowing yourself to move on and maybe save those positive experiences somewhere to remember. This new year is symbolic of a new beginning and a fresh start. But as Christians, we believe that that comes every day because of what Jesus has done for us. When we go to God and we admit and we confess and we repent and we lament some of the things that have gone on in our lives, we're given a fresh start. The old has gone and the new has come. After all, as it says in Lamentations, God's mercies, His gifts, His grace is new every morning. And so every day we can recognize that there is newness for us and we can move into the new day that God has for us.